In this lesson, we're going to go over a few more examples of indexing documents into Elasticsearch, and then we're going to go into the different components that are created as part of an index. So for this example, the kind of documents we're going to have are going to be related to business. So let's say we have a large business, large enterprise, and it has certain assets. For example, it has buildings or employees or contracts. So each one of those employees, contracts, buildings are going to have their respective documents. So let's start by doing a get command on this business index. And of course, we haven't created this index yet, so if we hit play, we're not going to get anything back. Index not found exception. But the put request with this document that I had this off screen here, I just pasted it. When I execute this, not only will this document be indexed into Elasticsearch, but also this business index will be created with certain default settings, and we'll go into those later. And this document is of type building, and the ID for this document is of course 110, so you're familiar with this. The different fields, we have address, floors, offices, and then this location field is actually an object field. Notice that it again has a JSON document as the value for this location field, and that's just latitude and longitude. So let's hit play and notice that this document has been created in the business index, and the type for this document is stated right here. It's a building type. So let me paste one more document here. This is document ID 217, and this is a different address and a different building with different locations. So let's hit play, and now we have two documents in the business index, both of which are type building. So now if you do a get request on the business index, let's hit play. This is going to give us the index structure that Elasticsearch was able to create based on the documents that we gave it. And at a high level, the index structure has two components. One is called mappings, and the other component is called settings. And we're going to go into great detail of each one of these components. But together, this settings and the different mappings that you'll see in just a second, this together is referred to as a schema. Just like in a database, you have different tables containing different information. Certain columns have certain data types and so on. Elasticsearch also has a schema, and that's made up of mappings and settings. The mappings component of the index defines the structure of what fields will contain what kind of data. Let's examine the schema for this business index. This is the index name, and we didn't give it any aliases, but there is a mappings component. And if you double click inside of this curly brace, you'll notice that this contains the mappings for the index. And the first mapping here is building. So double click here. These are all the fields inside of the building type, document type. All right. We have the address property, the floors property, and the location property. And inside of locations, we have the latitude and longitude as well. So you can actually, go through this document and figure out what's going on, right? The latitude and longitude fields, their data type is float, right? Elasticsearch figured this out on its own. And of course, the address property is a textual data, right? So it gave it the type text. So down here, we have the settings field, which contains stuff like shards and replicas. Both of, we'll go into those details later. But at a high level, we have the mappings component of an index, and we have the settings component of an index. And if we don't define this structure ahead of time, Elasticsearch basically comes up with the default settings based on the kind of documents that we try to index into a particular index. Okay, so now let's try to index a few more documents. We've got buildings, and we also have employees. So let me paste in a document for employees. So this is going to be a employee type of document, and these are the different fields. So let's hit play, and now we've added an employee to our index. Let's add one more employee and hit play, and there we go. Now we have two employees. All right. Now don't worry about getting this data exactly. Just type in any old name for an employee and title. You don't have to get this. You don't have to paste the same exact data that I'm pasting. Come up with your own fields and your own employees, but notice the type is employee and it's going into the business index. So now let's do a GET request again on the business index. And double click here inside of this mappings field, and you'll notice that we have the employee mapping now, all right? Double click in this, and these are the different fields that are associated with employees. And then we're not done yet. Inside of the mapping section, now we also have building, all right? So now we have 2 mappings inside of this business index, okay? So let's just come up with one more kind of document, and that's going to be contract. So this business index, the contract type, this is a contract. Notice the employees involved. This field is an array field, all right? Let's hit play, and now we've created a new document that is of type contract in the business index. And now if we do a GET request on business, it's going to have 3 types. Inside of the mappings field, we have employee. Going down, we have the building. And then finally, we now have contract, okay? So at a high level, an index has 2 components, a mappings component and a settings component. We have a choice of defining all of the mappings that an index contains ahead of time. But if we just index documents like as we are right now, Elasticsearch configures the structure of the index using default settings based on the documents that we give it, okay? Elasticsearch is smart enough to figure out that salary USD should be of type float, and the title, employee title, should be a text field, and so on, okay? And down here, again, we'll go into the settings of the index. We have to talk about shards, and we have to talk about replicas. But these are default settings that Elasticsearch came up with as we were indexing documents. So far we've been indexing in this lesson. Let's now talk about searching. And for that, there's a simple endpoint. We just put a /_search, okay? And this is basically just going to search for all of the documents in the business index. Let's hit play, and this returns all of the documents in the business index, all right? Now, this response here is, it may be a little obtuse for a lot of viewers. Don't worry about it. It's not hard to understand as you get used to it. The fields of concern here are hits, and inside of this hits object, we have this hits array, right? And the array is what contains the documents that we are searching through, okay? These are the building, the contract, the employee, all of the documents that we index so far into the business index are going to be returned as part of this search query. And the data is shown in the hits field, okay? Notice that the total field says 5 because we've so far indexed 5 documents. These different fields have been added to each one of these documents that are returned as a response from Elastic when we try to query. Now, this is querying the business index entirely. If I want to query a specific type, I can specify, the given type of document. And let's hit play. And now notice that in the hits object, the total is now just 1, and we only indexed this one document that was of type contract, okay? We also have employees. So for the employee type, let's hit play and notice that it's giving us those 2 employees that we indexed inside of this hits object. Inside of this hits array is where all of our documents are going to be displayed in the response of a search query, all right? Now you might be wondering, how do we, this is a way to get all of the documents for a particular type or the index. How do we get only those employees that have a given name or those buildings that have a certain address, right? How do we filter based on specific field values? Well, this course is all about searching. You're going to be doing plenty of searching, so don't worry about those details for now. But just to satisfy your appetite for now, there's a specific kind of query that's called a term query. And the syntax for it goes like this. So of course, we interact with Elasticsearch passing it JSON, and it responds in this JSON format. So the query that we're going to give it is, of course, going to be of type. It's going to be a JSON query. So this is the syntax. Don't worry about memorizing it for now. You're going to get plenty of practice. But basically, this is called a term query. And it's basically a field called query. And inside of this field is a JSON object that contains something called term. And then inside of here, there's another JSON object that should have the particular field and the value that we're searching for. So let's say we are searching for the name field to contain the word honor. Okay, so we have an employee that has a last name of Honor. Let's hit play. Whoops, I guess that didn't work. I forgot the R, Honor, Honor, and there you go. We also have a building with the address 11 Penn Ave. So if I change this to building, and for the address field, if I just say Penn, we know that's a component of the address. Let's hit play, and this is that document, right? The address is 11 Penn Avenue, and it gives the entire document, all right? So this is a way to specifically filter certain documents. This is called a term query. Don't worry about memorizing this syntax. We're going to go into all kinds of queries in this course, so you get plenty of practice. But for now, I just want to give you a general idea. To interact with Elasticsearch, we need to use JSON. So this is the request URL, right? The search endpoint, and we are passing in this JSON body, right, to search Elasticsearch for this criteria. And for indexing, we were doing a similar thing, right? We were passing a JSON body for indexing as well, right? So we interact with Elasticsearch, sending it queries in JSON and sending it index requests in JSON, and it responds in JSON as well, right? So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about what goes on behind the scenes when you send a request to Elasticsearch and the response is given. How does Elasticsearch route your request? There's a lot going on behind the scenes. We're going to get into topics such as shards and replicas, right? You probably remember those terms from looking at the index directly, right? If we go to get business, right? This is the index name. If we hit play, down here, the settings field contains this number of shards, number of replicas, and so on. So we're going to go into details of what exactly those are, and we'll also talk about how we can define our own indexes, right? Right now, this particular index was auto-generated by Elasticsearch based on the data we gave it. But you can define your own index structure, your own schema ahead of time before you index any documents. And that typically means defining the particular mappings and defining your settings. Before wrapping up this lesson, I just want to show you one quick thing. And you'll notice that right next to this play button, there is this wrench looking icon. Click that, and there's an option of copy as curl. So let's click that button, and now some syntax has been copied to our clipboard. So if I paste that, let me show you what that looks like. Let me bring up the text editor, and let's paste what was copied to our clipboard. So notice it's saying curl, and then it does xget, and then it gives this URL. This is the URL for our Elasticsearch cluster, okay? And then the /business is right here, what we defined in Kibana. So this is the full request that is sent by Kibana to Elasticsearch. It hides some details here so that it's easier to interact with the entire request. But essentially what this is this is a curl command in Linux. So if I, let me copy and paste this into a terminal. Let me open a new tab. We have Kibana running here and Elasticsearch running here. So let's add a new tab to that. And there you go. This is our new tab. And you could essentially be anywhere in this directory structure. Let's just go to the home directory. And if I paste that command, we put the curl xget and then the URL of the cluster and then the index. Let's hit enter and notice that we get a response. Okay, this response is the same one that's displayed on the right side of this window here. So I just wanted to show you that the actual request that's being sent is actually a curl request that looks like this. Similarly, if we have the query, do a /_search. If I search Elasticsearch for something, and again, like I said, we'll be going over this query logic in a little bit, I could do a match all query. Not important to go over the details of what this is just yet, but let's hit play, and it's going to give me all the documents in this index, in the business index. I could just do copy as curl, and in the command prompt, just paste it, and then hit enter, and there you go. This is our entire response. Okay, let's type clear to clear the console, and I'm going to run the previous command that I did earlier, and just add the parameter, the URL parameter called pretty, and hit enter, and notice that the entire settings and mappings, right, is shown in a reader-friendly way. This is printed in a pretty, so to speak, fashion. If we don't have this parameter as part of the URL, it's going to clump it up into what we saw right here. Okay, so obviously the output on the right side here is shown in a pretty fashion. So whatever we sent here, it's using the C-curl, sending that to Elasticsearch with the pretty parameter so that it displays in a nice fashion. So I just wanted to show you that this is another tool you can use to interact with Elasticsearch, the curl command, right? You can run that in your terminal, and that's another way to interact with Elasticsearch. We put this xget and xpost, and there are some others such as xdelete, and we'll cover those in the coming lessons. But if you want to get the raw request, all you have to do is come over here into Kibana, click on this wrench, and then go to copy as curl. And another thing is, if I take this entire URL and paste it into the browser, let's open a new tab and paste it into the browser. Notice that it gives me exactly the same response that was sent. Now, of course, as part of the body of the request, right? If we go back to Kibana, this is the body of the request, the JSON body. We can't really send it through the browser here. We can only send things through the URL. I can use the curl command and pass in this body with the request. And you can see what that looks like when you click on copy as C curl and go back to, let's clear the screen here. Let's paste it. Notice that it adds a -d at the end of this curl xget request. And then after the D, we have these quotes. Inside of these quotes is the actual body of the request, which is this JSON. And there are some other things that are added to this, such as content type, application/JSON, and then this -h parameter. All right, so I just wanted to show you that this curl utility is also another option for interacting with Elasticsearch. And it's available in Windows as well. I mean, this is the Mac operating system. It comes built in with curl because Mac is a Linux-based operating system. But Windows also has its own version of curl, which you can download and install from the website that I provided you earlier. We're going to be, for the most part, using Kibana to interact with Elasticsearch. So don't worry too much about curl unless you want to, create shell scripts to automate tasks. I just wanted to show you another way for interacting with the cluster. All right, so let's wrap up this lesson. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next lecture.